Hey everybody, Tracy from Weekly Fascination. I'm going to talk about some YouTube drama that's going on right now. It's between Chris Broad and Oriental Pearl, two creators that I respect both of them. The reason I respect them is I know how hard it is to build a YouTube channel. And I realize how talented Chris is and how he's built his community, his friends, his group of guys that he does videos with, like Joey and C-Dog and all these guys. And that's something I'm trying to build on my own. Maybe I'll talk about that later. But I respect these people because I know how hard it is to build an audience. And Chris has gone way beyond that. Writing a book, meeting the king, things like that. Oriental Pearl has some great, in-depth, kind of more documentary, kind of news style videos. But I guess what ended up happening was, Oriental Pearl had gone around and found some graffiti and highlighted that in a video, said Japan has changed. I might talk about that later. But I believe Chris responded with, please don't show the negative side about Japan. I think everybody loves Japan. Most people who are here love Japan. And or else they wouldn't be making a channel trying to highlight how awesome Japan is. And we've seen a lot of clickbaity crap recently on different social media. There's one that was going around about how, Japanese schools are so amazing, but they ended up showing a Chinese school. And if you can tell the difference between Chinese writing and Japanese writing, you recognize immediately it's from China. And so I even made a joke video about engagement farming. Maybe put a link of that in the description. By the way, all the channels I'm talking about, I'll put a link in the description because I want you to go see the original video. But what inspired me to make this was Only in Japan had a really good commentary about this drama. And I don't have a lot to add to that other than my own take. So I respect them because I know how hard it is to build an audience. And I know how hard it is to, you upload a video and you think this is going to be a banger. This is going to be my breakout video. Spend, for me, I work full time. So sometimes I spend every night, and I've actually been editing, and the sun comes in my bedroom in the morning. Oh, I got to get to work in a couple hours. So I pulled all-nighters just to edit a video. So I know how hard it is to do this. And so it kind of hurts me to see two people who have an audience get into it like that. I get Chris's point, and I'm going to refer you to X Japter. He answered some viewer comments, and every once in a while, you can't talk about Japan without telling the truth. I mean, if you want to be true, you want to be honest, you want to be authentic, you do have to say sometimes there are things that get on my nerves. Sometimes I'm in a crowd and I'm just like, I just got to get out of here. Sometimes people look at me funny. I think, do you look at me funny because I'm a foreigner? Or, I don't really know what it is. So be that as it may. But Only in Japan had a really good commentary on this. And I wanted to give my take. So I've made a couple videos that are negative about Japan. And Chris's comment really made me think, am I just, going for clickbait? Am I just going for, because negative always sells better. If you see the big YouTubers who do news and commentary, the more negative they get, the more views they get, the more engagement they get. Those comments drive engagement. They tell YouTube that people are watching this video and engaging with it. It drives that video to the top of the pile. So one reason I have made negative videos about Japan, you can find one on my channel if you want to. It's called Why You Shouldn't Move to Japan. That's a companion video to the video of why you should move to Japan. I try to cover both sides. I try to make it fair. Another video I made was about an execution ground, and it was a suggestion from a viewer. He said, you've highlighted some cool parts of Tokyo. Why don't you go here and check it out? So I did some research. Read some websites about it. I'm fortunate enough I've learned to read Japanese, so I can read original websites about it. And I was able to find a couple landmarks around town and tell the story of some of these people who were met their demise at this place at a time where the Japanese government was really, really strict on crime. And of course, the point of that was to lead people into my video about the 99% conviction rate in Japan. Now, is that a negative video about Japan? No, this idea, I'd marinated on this idea for years because as a lawyer and as somebody who's done work in the automotive industry, I know who Carlos Ghosn is, And I remember when he got arrested and then released and then rearrested. And I thought, well, how can that be? So I wanted to know. And then the subject of Johnny Somali, Ramzi Khalid Ismail, came up. And the criminal justice system in Japan has been fascinating to me. So I did a video on the 99% conviction rate. And that video about the execution grounds, at the end of that, I tell people, if you want to know why they have a 99% conviction rate, watch this video next. Now, why do I do that? Because I watch a lot of videos about how to grow an audience on YouTube. So one way to do that is to say, I have a video about this, and then there's a related video, you should watch this next. And so then the video about why you should move to Japan, that leads into the video why you shouldn't move to Japan. So it's all about keeping people engaged with my channel. Now, I did make a video about a place called Sanya, and that's where a lot of day laborers were living when Japan was going through this massive economic boom. And I remember moving here right at the tail end of the boom, 1990. And there were people who furnished their entire apartments out of what we call soudaigomi, the large furniture, TVs, things like that. When people would get their bonus at the end of the year, and these bonuses would be like 6 months' salary. So if you're making $60K a year, you would get a $30K bonus in the summer, a $30K bonus in the winter. So instead of making $60K, now you make $120K. So what do you do when you got money to burn? Well, there's a $2,000 TV I can go buy. I'll go down to Big Camera, and what do I do with my old TV that's maybe a year or two old? Just put it out on the curb. Well, foreigners who came to Japan saw this as pretty wasteful, so we would go pick those up. Not me, but specifically, but people living in guest houses and shared homes and stuff like that. They would see this 48-inch TV on the curb, and the people were so nice, they would actually tape a remote control to it. So, but the people who were working in construction during the bubble didn't have it as good as the salaryman or office lady, the OL. That's what we called them during the 90s. So these people who were making all this money, but in contrast, there were people who were just living paycheck to paycheck. So I wanted to highlight that. And that also came as a result. I made a video about how Tokyo became a megalopolis. And that video is done pretty well. It's almost hit 40K views. And for me, that's a breakout video. But somebody in the comments said, hey, you did a great video about why Tokyo became this megalopolis. You should go check out Sanya. So I did. And I hope that didn't come across as negative. It's more of like, not like a Vice documentary. I don't think I'm doing that level. But I try to be balanced. So I can see why Oriental Pearl highlighted this graffiti. But I want to point out something. I lived here in the 90s, from 1990 to 2000, and I lived in Yokohama. And underneath the tracks of the Toyoko line, by the way, this is when the Toyoko line would go to Shibuya, it was still above ground. Now it's below ground. When I came back in 2014, I'm like, well, where'd the Toyoko line go? And underneath those tracks were really nice ramen shops. You could get ramen for like 300, 400 yen. That's a filling meal. It's pretty healthy. And it'd be like, in today's exchange rate, $2. Can't even imagine that. But, so I remember around Sakuragicho Station and Kannai Station, there was this huge wall that went underneath the tracks, and there was graffiti all up and down that wall. Some of it was really good. It didn't look like vandalism, it looked like murals. So when I saw Oriental Pearl's video about graffiti, I thought, well, okay, sure, maybe, in the 90s there was a lot of graffiti, and then it got cleaned up, and now some of it has come back. Some of it's foreigners, and it looks more like vandalism to me. So I'd have to agree with her on that. But it's not a new thing. So, and I'm not criticizing you for that. I'm just saying that it's not a new thing. And so what I would say to Oriental Pearl, and nobody owes me anything. Nobody has to take my advice. This is just general advice. Chris has a very loyal following. You don't want to pick a fight with somebody who's got a very loyal following. Maybe his response rubbed you the wrong way. I get it. I'm an emotional person. I'm a lawyer, but I'm also emotional. I'm human. And sometimes I respond. I'll get on X and say something, and then I'll delete it, and then I'll maybe put the app away, and then the next day I'll say, hey, thanks for pointing that out. Same thing with the comments on my channel. I get criticism all the time because I'll throw a Japanese word at the end of an English sentence, and that just naturally for me has American intonation. And so people will tell me like, oh, your intonation's all off. I'm like, okay, well, this is not a language learning channel. This is let's just talk about Japan channel. And so that's fair enough. But if you really want to learn pronunciation, go to Dogen's channel. I'll put a link in the description. That's the person you should model your Japanese after, not mine. Now, if you see me speak Japanese at work, you would say, okay, this guy actually speaks Japanese. But on my channel, I don't really use it that much because it's not necessary, and that's not what the channel is about. So for Oriental Pro, I would say Chris has a very loyal following. You don't want to pick a fight with somebody who's got a very loyal following, because this is just a social media thing, okay? This is not a Chris thing. This is not an Oriental Pro thing. This is a social media thing. People who have a big following, when they see that person they follow and they perceive them as being attacked, they will fight back on that person's behalf. So you're not just making a comment to Chris, you're making a comment to Chris's audience. And I would say to Chris, and you have no reason to listen to my advice, and this is not, so I'm not going to give advice, but I would say to anybody in a position of power, Chris is in a position of power. I would say to anybody in a position of power, when somebody who has a smaller audience, and this could be with authors, this could be with newscasters, this could be with YouTubers, this could be at work, okay? Like, let's say you're the CEO of the company and a staff level person criticizes you. What do you have to gain from like making that person feel bad, or we call it punching down. And what do you have to gain from that? Number one, it can make you look like a bully. Number two, it can inspire your audience. I'm not saying you're doing this intentionally, but it can inspire your audience to also comment that person's channel and maybe downvote their videos, stuff like that. So anybody who's got a big audience, anybody who's in a position of power, I would say be really careful about criticizing somebody that has maybe less power. And this is not a judgment on the size of your channel. That's, but I believe Chris has a bigger channel, has a really low following. Now, as Only in Japan mentioned, I don't watch these channels regularly, and for the same reason that he said, I don't want to be influenced by them when I make videos. And for the same reason, I don't watch other major, I do watch Mr. Beast because I just want to see what he's up to. I don't watch those channels, and I don't watch a lot of content about Japan because I don't want to be influenced by that, and I don't want my channel to come across as a copycat of those channels. Now, I will say, two channels that I do watch, and this goes back to Chris and his community, these people that he's kind of grown his audience with, like Sea Dog and Joey. I'm also trying to build a community of people, of channels around my size. So I'm working with X Chapter. Paul is a really cool guy, really genuine guy. When you meet somebody on social media, you think, okay, this is a person I could have a conversation with. And what I always try to do is say, hey, let's get together for a coffee and see if it makes sense to do a collaboration together. Because you might not click, right? Two really cool people just might have nothing to talk about, right? And that's okay. And the same thing happened with John of Ohazas. When I first saw his podcast, I thought, this guy must have a massive following. His production quality is off the charts. His love for the Japanese language and the topics he's covering is just next level. And I was really surprised that he didn't have a massive YouTube channel. Really surprised. Now, so I did a podcast with John. I've done 2 collabs with X Chapter, Paul, and I really respect both these guys because they have the mindset of, just keep going, just keep making content. Paul's very consistent. That's something I wish I had. But as far as the controversy, I don't see any winners in this. And like I said before, and I've said this a million times, I'm an attorney. I've been involved in litigation, and people with really big channels used to really intimidate me, and people in really big positions of power used to really intimidate me, but I've worked on cases where the amount in controversy, so the amount that people are suing for, is $1 billion. Okay, so I don't get intimidated that much by powerful people anymore. And I've been involved in cases which were white collar crime cases where if we lose that case, my client could go to federal prison. So there's a lot of responsibility on my shoulders in those cases. Now, as a recruiter, I talk to general counsel, I talk to Japanese bengoshi, I talk to HR managers, people who used to intimidate me. I talk to those people every day. I've just got used to, that's just my job, that's just what I do. Back to the community I'm trying to build. So I really want you to go check out John's channel. And one thing I love about John is his smile and his just zest for life. And he's coined the phrase coffee receptors. And there are a couple videos that he's posted that I watch over and over again. Because you can just see how much he loves coffee. You can see how much he loves the Japanese language. You can see how much he loves, his enthusiasm comes out in the topics he's covering. He's got a great video on Tall Boys Brewery. Go check that out. And in X Chapter, like I said, he's very consistent. Every Saturday post a video, sometimes post a video in the middle of the week. And he's grown his audience. I think when I met him, he had about 7,000 or 8,000 subscribers. Now he's got over 10,000. And as soon as he hit 10,000, the next thing he hit like 13,000. He's probably got 14 or 15 by the time you watch this video. I've also been lucky enough to meet Nicholas Pettis. He actually runs the gym that I go to. The first time I met Nick, I went to see the Mike Tyson fight, and we went to a pub, and I was surprised. He tweeted out, or he posted on X, he said, I'm going to go watch the Mike Tyson fight. Who wants to come? And I thought, well, it's very convenient for me to go there. I've always wanted to meet Nick. I've walked past his gym a million times, and I've toyed with the idea of doing CrossFit. And I know once I meet him, he's going to tell me I should come to the gym. So I thought, okay, I'll go to this event. And here I meet this guy who was a K1 champion. And at the time, he had about 70,000 subscribers on his channel. And he was the most down-to-earth guy. I find out, and I've seen this over and over again, people who are really good at combat sports are some of the nicest people. And then another time, a buddy of mine, Daisuke, who has American Life Real Estate, we've done some videos together. I toyed with the idea of going into real estate. I took the real estate exam, didn't pass, but I took it in Japanese. And then I got this offer to come here and be a recruiter. And I took that. Doesn't require a test, but I still get to use all my contacts in the legal field. So that's what I'm doing now. But Daisuke said, hey, I'm going to drop by Nick's house and I'm going to drop some paperwork off. You want to come? I'm like, yeah, sure. And so I end up there, and I didn't know that Nick and his wife were having a party that night. But we go in, and she said, hey, do you want a cup of coffee? Angela, total sweetheart. Do you want a cup of coffee? I'm like, yeah, sure. And she loves coffee too. I love coffee. So we sit down and talk for a while, and then people start coming in. I didn't realize they were having a party that night. And Nick had made this huge roast, and he had like fresh ground wasabi. And to me, that's the only way to eat wasabi. It doesn't come out of a tube. That's just like flavored horseradish or something like that. But Nick started serving this roast beef. And all of a sudden, there's all these people there, and I'm just at this party where I was like, how did I get here? And Nick, I told Nick I had a podcast. He had watched a video on my channel. He said, hey, I watched your channel, and you got some good videos. A couple things you could tweak to make it better. I thought, well, the guy's got like a lot more subscribers than I do. But I never approached him aggressively and said, hey, Nick, I want to do something with you. He offered to be on my podcast. And so we did that. And I was really glad we did. It was a really great conversation. I don't think of them as interviews. I think of them as conversations. But here's my advice. When you meet a person who has a bigger audience than you, don't aggressively go out there and take out your camera and say, can we get a picture together so I can post it on social media? I didn't even ask him for a picture together until much later. After we did the podcast, I said, we should get a video, or we should get a picture of us for the podcast. And it ended up, we had both just got done working out. We're all sweaty. He's like, don't use that. But at this party at Nick's house, I was talking about how I used to be in shape. And he looked right at me. He said, give me 3 to 6 months. I will change your life. And that was his pitch. And I said, okay. So we started working out together. I quickly lost like 15 pounds. Over the weekend, I went to yoga, and then I went to CrossFit. Nick taught, and then today's Monday, I went to CrossFit again. And I've kind of become addicted. I'm not one of those person who tells everybody they need to do it, because it's not for everybody. But the way to approach somebody with a huge channel is don't ask for anything from them, because as a smaller creator, at the time I think I had about 1,000 or 2,000 subscribers. All I can do is gain from doing with somebody like Nick. And what can I bring to him? Maybe a couple people who haven't subscribed to his channel yet, but he really had nothing to gain. Now, of course, he's got a book, so I brought the book to the podcast, and I kept referring to the book. I started to tell a couple stories out of the book and realized I don't want to tell the whole story. You should just read the book, right? So read Nick's book. It's a fantastic book. I read the book before doing the podcast, so I'd at least know who I was talking to and know a little bit more about the guest. But also when I read the book, I learned some keys to success. And one of those things is you do it even when you're tired. Nick went through this 1,000-day training program in Kyokushin Karate. He ended up being the last student of Masoyama, who's like an institution in Japan. He's the one who started Kyokushin Karate. He didn't know it at the time that he was going to be the last student of Masoyama. What I learned from that is don't wait till tomorrow to do anything. Because he didn't know when he entered the dojo that he was going to be the last student. But if he had waited a year and said, well, I'll do it next year, then it wouldn't have been the same, right? And I learned you do things even when you're hurt. So Saturday, when Nick taught a class at CrossFit, he told me about a little injury he had. He hurt his back. And he said, well, I'm going to take it easy today. And before I knew it, he's showing us the proper form for a pull-up and a deadlift. I'm like, well, I thought you're injured. So he's a person who's trained his mind to do stuff even when he's injured. But I learned that thinking, and so when I started CrossFit, I thought, I'm going to take this same thinking into CrossFit when I go. Even when I'm tired, I'm still going to go. Even if I have a bad session. And I told him one time, I said, man, I feel kind of bad. Like, you guys put all this effort into training me, and I wasn't really 100% today. He goes, no. The point is you came. You came to class. You did what you could. It's okay. So I guess a bad day at the gym is better than a good day sitting on the couch, right? So, but I learned more about Nick's thinking. I learned more about, even if you're hurt, you still do it. Even if you're tired, you still do it. Even if you don't want to, you still do it. Now, I take this into my YouTube channel. A couple videos you've seen of me where I have circles under my eyes, like now. I just finished a 10-hour shift after CrossFit in the morning, then a 10-hour shift, and now a video. And I thought during the day, like, what should I talk about? You can build a really good community on YouTube. So I'm building that with John. I'm building that with Paul. I've been lucky enough to do a podcast with Nick. And the way to approach people is say, hey, you know what? I really love what you're doing on your channel. Try to find people who are about the same size as you, and say, hey, let's grab a coffee. Or if you don't drink coffee, let's grab a tea, whatever. Let's hang out for half an hour. See if it makes sense to do a collab together. And so I'm building this community with John and Paul, and we talk all the time by text. We have a text group where we talk all the time. Say, hey, what do you think about this thumbnail? What do you think about this topic? What do you think about this idea? I've got a video that's not published yet. Check it out. See if there's any hiccups in here. Is there any point where you get bored? And I'll fix it and then re-upload it. And what do you think about this thumbnail? Does this make you want to watch the video? A lot of times, what I do is I have the context for the video. And I got all these reasons in my head why you should watch it. And sometimes I forget to convey that. And these guys remind me, hey, you've got all the context in your head, but you haven't conveyed that to the viewer. Do that in the thumbnail, do that in the title, do that in the first 30 seconds of the video. So there's a really great community you can build with people of your size, and you all grow together, hopefully, and then you have your group, you have your class, right? But back to Chris and Oriental Pearl. I hope they squash this beef. I hope it doesn't go anywhere past this. It's not good for either channel. And what I hope we all get back to doing is just making videos about what we love about Japan. Yes, I made a couple negative videos. I hope I explained why I did that. A lot of clickbaity videos of, wow, Japan is so wonderful. And then, but I also want to show that, yeah, it's just a real place too. There are real people who live here, real people with real problems, right? And so when people move over here, I don't want them to come with rose-colored glasses and think that every day is going to be Disneyland. You're just going to run into, wherever you go, there you are, right? So if you have problems with your coworkers back at home, wherever you're from, if you end up getting in arguments with your coworkers, you're going to come to Japan. You're going to find the same thing here. If office politics has been an issue for you, you're going to come to Japan. It's going to be the same thing for you. There was a guy who owned a gas station. It was at the edge of town, and a lot of people were moving into this town. The town was booming. Industry was booming. It was a new factory or something like that. And all these people were moving in. And they would ask the owner of the gas station when they would gas up their cars, they would say, well, what's this town like? And he would say, well, what about where you came from? And if they say, oh man, it was terrible. We hated the people and, just all kinds of politics. The Chamber of Commerce sucked and, you can't get a good job. And, I didn't get along with anybody. And he'd say, well, I think you'll find this town's going to be a lot like that too. And if people came through and they'd gas up their car and say, hey, tell me about this town. What's it like here? And he would say, well, tell me about your old town, where you come from. And they say, oh man, the people are great. We hate to leave, but I just found a new job in this new town. And boy, I'm really going to miss the people from church. I'm really going to miss my kids are going to miss all their classmates. They had such wonderful friends. And the neighborhood barbecues were so great. He would say, you know what? I think you're going to find this town to be a lot like that. So wherever you go, there you are. So I hope these people squash this beef, and I hope we don't see it escalate. And like Only in Japan said, you don't want to get involved in litigation. I don't think it's going to go that far. And I would like Legal Mindset, if anybody's watched this far, I would like him to give his analysis on this, because he gives a great analysis. Always, when you ask an attorney, what do you think is going to happen? The answer I usually give is, it depends. I've had a lot of people ask me questions, legal questions, and they always leave out some fact that turns the whole case on its head. And then they tell their friends, like, oh, I ran circles around this attorney. He didn't even know the answer. And so I always start off with, it depends. So what I like about Legal Mindset is he gives you the law, gives you the facts of the case, and then lets you be the judge. I'd like to see him give his analysis on this. But back to Only in Japan, the reason you don't want to end up in litigation, anybody, is that everybody gets hurt, okay? I had a professor in law school explain it like this. Getting into litigation is like getting into a fight in the bar. You have several chances. The other person might be belligerent. The other person might be unreasonable. They may be asking you, I want you to apologize and take it back. Sometimes it's worth just doing that. I've seen some litigation cases solved by an apology. And it doesn't really mean that you're wrong. It just means, I'm sorry this happened, right? So back to my point of getting into litigation is like getting into a bar. You have several chances along the way to de-escalate. The other person on the other side of the bar might give you a dirty look. You don't have to return that. You don't have to give them a dirty look back. They might come over and say, hey, you're sitting on my bar stool. That's your opportunity to say, hey, okay, I'm sorry, I'll move. Chris Voss, the FBI negotiator, has a great way to handle things like situations like this. Never return that person's hostility with hostility, because it's just going to escalate. And then you end up outside and somebody gets hurt, sometimes really bad, or the police come, you end up in jail. You don't want that. Litigation is the same thing. It's extremely expensive. I've done cases where I was told this is going to be 2 weeks. Ended up being 2 years. And there were 2 attorneys on the case. And I know what attorneys get paid. So the client was probably paying $500-$600 an hour for these 2 people to work on this case. They're junior attorneys. By the end of the case, there were about 200 attorneys, each charging about $250 an hour. And this went on for about 2 years. So you can just, if you want to do some quick math, that ended up costing the client millions and millions of dollars. So you think it's a small thing, ends up being a big thing. I don't expect these two to get together and everything's going to be all rainbows and lollipops. But you know what? If they did, maybe just DM each other. Keep it out of the public eye. Maybe just DM each other. Say, hey, I'm sorry this happened. I don't want to continue this. Let's just de-escalate. Let's just go back to making videos about our love for Japan. What I would love to see is another video from Chris about, some of the great stuff he's done, like these charity events, these cycling events, and these really, there was a great video where they went drifting and they had like drones and all this stuff. And I thought, wow, that'd be really cool if I could do something like that someday. Not there yet, but I don't have the budget and really don't have the capability. But I'd love to see another video like that, something wild and crazy from Chris. I'd love to see more stuff from Oriental Pearl. I do understand where she's coming from. There are things in Japanese society that aren't perfect. Sometimes I highlight them. I'd love to see more videos from Oriental Pearl, highlighting stuff that you see, stuff that's important to you. But I know you both do this because you love Japan. I want to see more of that. That's it for me. Thank you.